Charlotte present, Julie Getchell, Richard Haig, Phil Hood,
Present.
John Marsden,
Present.
Susan Ryder.
Present.
Great. We have a quorum, so we can begin. We start with the pledge. If you guys will all stand and join me. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you, for anybody who is here for the after the entertainment section of tonight's program, we are going to rearrange the order of things just a little bit. We're going to bring on the Lake Bluff Middle School Encore students to do a recital for us, but we will get back to the regular meeting and public comment and all that as soon as we take care of the more lighter side of business tonight. So for your entertainment pleasure, we're going to bring in Miss C and the Lake Bluff Middle School Encore Choir.
And we, board members, like,
Good evening and welcome to Encore's performance at this year's December school board meeting. We're very happy to be here. Encore's already had a busy season at the Lake Forest Choral Festival. Last week we went out and sang at some nursing homes, the VA hospital, and the Lake Bluff Library. And today we will be singing for you. So our first piece is from the video game Civilization 4, but they will be singing in Swahili, and it's a very joyful song. And then we will be singing our version of Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker. So thank you very much for having us this evening, and here is Encore.
Baba yetu liye mbinguni yetu amina. Baba yetu liye jina lako litukuzwe.
Baba yetu liye mbinguni yetu amina. Baba yetu liye jina lako litukuzwe.
Utubelea chakula chetu tunachotaji utasamehe makosa yetu we, kama nasi tunavyosamehe waliotukosea, usitutie katika majaribu lakini utuokoe na yule mwovu wa milele. Tunachotaji utusamehe makosa yetu we, kama nasi tunavyosamehe waliotukosea, usitutie katika majaribu lakini utuokoe na yule mwovu wa milele. Jina lako litukuzwe. Jina lako litukuzwe.
very much for having us, and we are ready to strike the set. But first, people that need to shoot out really quickly, go first, please.
Well done, guys.
Thank you very much.
Wow, the music is beautiful.
Thank you. You guys did a great job. Good job.
Nice job. Thank you.
Good job, Allie.
I enjoyed it.
Oh, middle school?
I was a little boy. I was still on the grade. So I got always look at school.
But then all of a sudden they shoot up.
It looks like fun to me, but
They practice a lot like that.
yeah, she's trying to blow us, so.
Thanks for coming. Have a great Christmas. Loved your Christmas card.
They did a really great job.
Happy Christmas. No, spend it off with you.
Well, sometimes I see
When you introduce them, I'm going to go stand. Anastasia Teal. And Kenna. Banger. Sorry to take your ball out of here.
Thank you. That was
Thank
great.
you. They did a great job.
Great job. Thank you. All right. That was a hard act to follow. That's a hard act to follow.
It's all downhill from here.
We have one more fun thing on the agenda, and we're going to introduce a couple of students who were superintendents for the day. And if Anastasia, sorry if I screw up the names, Anastasia Tiggle and Kenna McBain would come to the front of the podium and stand with Dr. Sophie, we'd appreciate it.
I'd like to introduce you to two future superintendent candidates. They are going to talk to you a little bit about the day that we spent together, which was very exciting. You guys both look awesome. Do you want to start?
Sure.
Just these are my bosses, so they're your bosses too. Okay, so you just need to tell them how we spent the day.
Well, first we went,
Remember, we observed a classroom.
first we went to a kindergarten classroom and we saw what they did.
Uh-huh.
And then we went to the high school
Then we went to, we came
Yeah,
here.
here.
Who did we meet with here?
Mr. Irvin.
Mr. Irwin. And
And
Miss O'Hara.
Miss O'Hara. And
Some other opinions. Okay, keep going.
then we went out
We went to the
high school.
Who did
And
we see over there?
the superintendent of the high school.
Do you remember what his name is? Mr. Semek?
And then we went out for lunch.
And then we went out for lunch. And didn't you have some important signing work to do?
Yeah.
Can you talk to our bosses here?
Yes.
That's who I have to report to, so that's who you're sharing with. Okay, what else did we
She
do?
approved our papers, right?
Exactly.
We went to the middle school.
Okay, I forgot about that. What did we do over there?
We went to a couple of classes.
And we talked a little bit about the renovations over there, didn't we?
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you before I turn it over to Kenna, when you went home to tell your mom, what was something you just were so surprised about?
I was surprised that,
Do you want to think about that?
Yes.
All right, we'll turn it back over to you here in a minute.
Okay.
All right, so Kenna, what did we see in that kindergarten classroom?
So they were doing like words and stuff and like practicing like their like separating words. And so they were doing really, really well. They seemed like really intent on it and stuff. And so then after that we went to the village hall and we met Mr. Irvin and Kathy O'Hara. And we discussed with them a few things like the thing on the gazebo with the
There was a contest, right, that the community had, and we actually discussed how to come up with a candidate to turn on the tree for the tree lighting, right? So you guys were kind of in charge of that. That was pretty exciting.
Yeah. And then we went to the high school and we met Mr. Semek.
And he took us to a couple classes. Do you remember about those?
Yeah, we went to like a library, I think, and a few other classrooms. There was a robotics classroom, and it had like 3D printers in it and stuff like that. And then after that, we went to Buffington's, and
The favorite part of the day.
and then after that, we went to the district office, and we
Did you meet with these two men over here?
Oh yeah, wait. So before we did all that, so then we met Dr. Rubenstein and Mr. Kahn,
And what do they do for the
and
district?
so Dr. Rubenstein is like in charge of the testing and stuff like that, I think. And then Mr. Kahn is in charge of the finance.
Good, see?
And then after that, that was like in the beginning of the day though. So,
Right.
and then when we came back to the district office in the afternoon, we signed some thank you notes.
To our board
Yeah,
members.
to our board members.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So what did you think about the day? Were you surprised or did you have any questions?
Well, I was surprised about how busy it is because like, you have to like go everywhere.
In fact, I think that's what you said to me too. You said, "Are you always this busy?"
Yeah.
And I said, today is an easy day, right?
Yeah.
And was there anything you wondered about in your final report to the board?
I don't think so. No.
All right. Did you want to share kind of what you thought of them? Or did you come up with them?
Well, I was really excited that we saw the 3D printers.
Yeah, you like those 3D printers at the middle school, didn't you?
Yeah.
It's pretty exciting. I will share that this was all made possible through Pumpkin Fest, and I said I'd be happy to donate superintendents for the day, and I was lucky enough to get these two awesome ladies who are going to be fantastic leaders in their own time, whether it's in schools or in business. And it really made me get back to what I do for my job, and it's all about kids, right? and doing what's best. Now, I'm going to tell you the hardest part of my job is now I have to answer questions when they have questions. And you know what you do? If you don't know the answer, what do you say? I don't know, but I'll get back to you right away. Okay? All right, so I'm going to turn it over to you because we have a question.
All right. Yeah.
What do you think the hardest part of Dr. Sophie's job is each day?
Well, I think it's getting from place to place because, like,
You think she needs a faster car?
yeah. Or maybe, like, because like, you have to go to a meeting and then maybe you have to observe classrooms and you're just everywhere all the time. And so it would be, like, difficult to get everywhere.
But what do you think the most fun part of my job would be?
Well, I think it's interacting with students.
It is. Definitely. Do we have, now we have to ask, what you want to ask them? Do you have any more questions?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. Do any of you have any questions?
Yeah.
What grade are you in?
I'm in 5th.
And what grade are you in? And we had a lovely day.
Yeah.
I couldn't have picked a better day, the highlight of my year so far. I want to thank both of you for spending the day. We'll have to do a follow-up luncheon at Bluffington for you.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. That was cool. Okay, back to regular business. We're going to resume with item 3. Yeah, but if you guys don't want to stay, no offense.
I want to share that we're going to move that one thing up too.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming.
We're going to resume with item 3, public comment, but just so everybody knows, we're also going to move up item 8B, which is our report on the middle school, to item right at the beginning of item 7. Under presentations, we'll do our quickie reports for all the administrators, and then go right to the middle school in case anybody here would like to observe that conversation. So in the meantime, we offer an opportunity for public comment. If anybody would like to address the board, please feel free to do so now. There will be an opportunity to address the board after the meeting as well. If not, we'll go right to our reports, and we'll start with the principal at the elementary school, Margaret St. Clair.
Actually, both principals are waiving their reports this evening because Nate has to talk about DC.
Okay.
So, and in order to expedite, we're moving forward.
Fast and efficient, I like that. Any other reports canceled coming up that I should know about?
No, everybody else is here.
Okay, next we'd like to introduce for the PTO, Ms. Eva Rice.
Hello, how are you? I just wanted to give a brief update on some of the things we've been doing over at LBES and LBMS with PTO. As you may know, we had a fall fundraiser. It was the Charleston Wrapping Paper fundraiser, and we ended up making about $5,600 from that. So it was a quick 2-week sale, and it was pretty easy, so that was nice. From the Pumpkin Fest and Pumpkin Chase fundraiser, we totaled about $28,000 in profit, so that was really good. We usually waver between $25,000 to $30,000 every year, so we're right on target. And then we also, the LBES book fair made $3,400. We have an LBMS book fair coming up in January, so I'll report that later. And then Spiritware has made about $1,200 in sales thus far with the fall and the holiday sale. So those are kind of our fundraisers for right now. And I also wanted to talk about, I know we've had discussions about kiddos and recycle and compost, and just a few updates. Donati's has pulled out of the kiddos contract, but we have Michelle over at Kiddos has helped us find another vendor, Luke's, which will take over Pizza Day and Pasta Day.
You can speak more into the...
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
So we're still fine. Orders have been, improving over time, and everyone seems pretty happy with Kiddos. Recycle and compost. We had this training session and we had 42 parents show up to learn how to recycle and compost, which was really exciting. Lots of new faces, and there's some changes. We're breaking the shift in 2 different shifts so people aren't there for 4 hours at a time, but it was really exciting. There's a lot of chatter about it, and I think people are really excited about what the school is doing to teach our kids about recycling and compost. So that's about it for us at the PTO. Thank you.
Thanks for all you do.
Thank you. I noticed that I skipped an agenda item number 4, which I'll cycle back to that after we finish these reports. So now we're going to go to Miss Wendy White for the Alliance.
So I had a lot to say, but I don't know how much voice I have, so bear with me. About a month ago, Alliance awarded 5 grants to the elementary school, totaling about $11,500, and there were 5 grants, one for a kindergarten Spanish language lending library, a 3rd grade Playaway audiobook collection, some new books for the K2 reading room, and a week-long in-residence poetry and music workshop with a Mr. Bill Balinski. Don't know if you're familiar with him. I haven't seen him before, but I looked at his website and he looks like a lot of fun. So we're excited about all that. And we provided some scholarship assistance for the 5th grade Atwood trip. So with all that in mind, I'd like to remind everyone that we're in the middle of our fundraising campaign for the fall. And so if you did not receive a letter from Alliance, or you think perhaps yours has been misplaced, I have extra donation cards, and I'm taking to carrying them on me. So if anyone would like one, just let me know. You can send me an email at grants@lbc.
Your website too. You can donate on your website. Or no?
I'm getting to
Oh, sorry.
So yes, you can just ask me for another card, or anyone on the Alliance board. I think some of them have them with them. Or yes, you can go to our website, lb65alliance.org, and you can make a PayPal donation through there, or from our Facebook page. You can also donate there. And there was an email that went out last week to district parents, and I believe there was also a link there. So you can make donations in any of those ways. So that in mind, we've been getting in some donations, and some of them have been they've requested that we earmark them for future middle school grant requests. And so obviously the middle school teachers didn't ask for anything this fall. That makes sense. So we kind of set that money aside, but we paid out for the elementary school, and in anticipation, we've set some of that money aside. So anyway, the Alliance board met last night to discuss what we would do with these donations that have come in kind of earmarked. And so we decided to set up kind of a temporary fund. We keep it open as long as it makes sense to leave it open. Someone suggested like 2 years, and I thought, we'll clean that out way before 2 years. So we'll have that available. So if people want to make donations specifically for things that the grant requests that the middle school will make come this spring or fall, or whatever, you can do that through Alliance. So those donations are tax deductible and eligible for corporate matching. So it's a good, efficient way to help out. And also, in addition to that, Alliance itself anticipates being able to fund grants probably equal to about an annual fundraising period, in addition to any donations we receive from here on out. So look forward to kind of seeing the list of particulars and helping out with whatever we can. We're excited.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anything from Mr. Khan?
We've started preparing for the move this coming summer, and are cleaning out equipment that we don't want to move, that we don't need to store anymore. So we just wanted to remind you of the policy for disposal of equipment. Most of this equipment was not of any value, but we in your packet is a list of the equipment, just for your notification that we're disposing of. We're either recycling the material or scrapping if there's no recycling options available.
Okay. Questions? Mr. Rubenstein? Dr. Rubenstein? So our Director of Student Services and Technology and Assessment updates, Dr. Kevin Rubenstein.
Last year, one of the recommendations from the Technology Committee was that we add the option for student email at Lake Bluff Middle School under a controlled environment in an effort to help our students to understand how to interact online using email in an appropriate and sort of controlled and monitored environment. And so we're excited that we are going to be rolling that out after winter break. I've been working with Mr. Blackmer, and we have actually brought on a firm called Gaggle, which provides 24-hour oversight of our student email systems and everything on Google Apps. So it is a way for us to make sure that students are communicating in an appropriate way. They will only be able to communicate within the LB65 domain, so they'll only be able to communicate with their peers and with teachers. And similarly, they won't be able to receive email from outside the LB65 domain. So that's where we're starting with the student email system. And if that is successful over the course of the spring, then we will be looking to expand that. We've had requests. We're looking at expanding that to other grade levels, similar to how other schools and districts in the area have that available to students. So, very excited about it.
Thanks. President's report, very brief. I just wanted to let everybody know, I'm not going to steal thunder from the upcoming presentation, but we received our approvals at the village last night for, we needed an amendment to an ordinance, an existing special use permit, and a variation from the village's gross floor area requirements to allow for the construction of and renovation of middle school. And so last night we got that approval, and we've been through 4 or 5 various committee meetings leading up to that, maybe more. And I just wanted to just give a big thank you to the village board and to the architectural board review and the planning commission zoning board of appeals, as well as Drew Irvin and his staff, Mr. Brandon Stanek, Jeff Hansen, and Mike Croak, all of which who worked very hard behind the scenes helping our administrators as well as those folks at White Architect, making sure that all this went smoothly and giving us all kinds of feedback. So not only is this informational for you guys, but just to publicly thank the village for helping this to go as smoothly as possible. So that's my report. And now we go to Dr. Suffer.
Craig, if you want to come and get set up, my report is very short. Mr. Bickert is here today from IHC, and they're also going to give a financial, just a quick budget update with the project. While they're getting set up, I want to just share with you that even though Target is new, they have actually supplied 11 of our students, 5 at elementary and 6 at middle, an opportunity to come and have their eyes tested. Out of the 11 kids that were tested, 10 of them will receive glasses for free. And the optometrists have insisted they will be delivering the glasses to the schools and dispense and fit each child for these glasses. So
that's pretty cool. What
a wonderful, wonderful partnership. And I want to thank the nurses as well as Kevin that really oversaw that whole situation. One of our administrators, who shall remain nameless, actually collected money and offered the kids an opportunity to have snacks and buy a little token gift for Christmas while they were at the Target. So we want to thank that administrator also. It was very successful, and I think it's really a great thing that they're partnering with us. So if you ever are at Target, of which I'm starting to be at a little bit more than I should be, make sure we say thank you to them because they're good partners. And now Craig and
I'd like to, if it's okay, can I cycle back to that item I missed?
absolutely while he's getting set
Yeah,
up.
I apologize. I skipped over item 4, which is our weekly. We have an addition of the opportunity for the board to offer additions of future agenda items or items to discuss. For your refreshing your memories, we have several on the list already. One to deal with the conflict of interest policy. We are going to review the board agreements, and we are going to determine future the location of board meetings once the middle school is renovated. Is there any other agenda items people would like to add for the future? Not hearing any. We will then move to item 8B, which is the middle school update.
Craig, after you guys present, then I'll follow up with our issue and a report on that.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, Dr. Sophie and distinguished guests, thanks so much for having us back. Just by way of update, we've been hard at it. A lot has been going on behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. We'll push the village approval process off to the side for just a moment back at the office. The team has been working very diligently on the first bid release package, which Mr. Bickert from IEC will review with you in just a moment. Those are really the detailed drawings that go out to the contractors for proposals and pricing for a select set of the work scope. And again, Tim will explain that in just a moment. In conjunction with that, the other half of the team has been working with the village, putting together documents, answering questions, making presentations, soliciting input, and incorporating that input into the documents as we kind of go along. I know you've been probably kept abreast of what was going, some of the details of the process. I can tell you that we feel very comfortable that we've heard all the comments. We've addressed them in some way, shape, or form, fashion, whether it's in those items are incorporated into the base bid documents and the drawings that we're putting together, or they might be even put in as alternate pricing. So if fund or the pricing comes back favorable to the district, the Board of Education will have the opportunity and the chance to either accept or reject those alternates depending on your interest and
priorities
incorporated into the project. So there's a lot of flexibility built into the process that we're putting forth. And at the appropriate time, we'll keep you abreast of what those options are and hopefully get your input and move forward with the project. Is there anything I forgot? I'm trying to think. Well, of course, the biggest thing, the thing that I'm here for, the entrance. Last time we were in front of you, and then even when we were going from the village, there was one part of the project that needed further refinement and development. And that would be the main entrance. Probably the single most, the biggest item that got the most play and the most comment from all the people that we were talking to over the last couple of months. When we left you last, this is really a picture of what was presented as just a sort of placeholder for the conversation. And it showed a reworking of the main entrance stairs, with some selected planters kind of situated and positioned in between the exterior ramp leading up to the main entrance. That is kind of where we left it. Having gone through and talked to the folks at the ADR, as well as the zoning board of appeals, there were some comments and suggestions for making improvements to the main entrance. We've listened to them and had the opportunity of going back to a couple of members at the ADR, or at the ADR. And we are still refining some of the details, but as it stands right now, the main entrance is starting to take the direction that we're looking at here. Just very quickly, to kind of point out what we're doing, we're still incorporating a ramp. Widened stairs was something that was requested that we look at. Incorporating, kind of opening up the main entrance, if you will, so that it grabs people's attention and draws people to the doors in a neat and orderly, efficient fashion. So that would be the ramps that you see right over here, while the stairs on the far right, and then sandwiched in between what you see sort of in that's dark and grassland. Not fully visible over here, I think, just for the quality of the projector, but really is a reflection of the kind of presentation stairs that we have on the inside of the building. Kind of taking that same vocabulary, same elements, and putting them on the outside of the building, so it really acts as a place for kids to congregate before, after school, as they're waiting for their parents or queuing into the school. Incorporated into those platform stairs are a series of smaller planters. So those populate both the front, kind of the center area, and the bigger planter area in the back, and just to help soften some of the hardscape and all the things that are kind of going on at that front entrance. That's where we're at right now. Budget at this figure is going to be presenting in a few moments is not reflective of these design changes. The work scope has grown, just to be perfectly frank with you, and it is up to both of our teams to kind of corral those costs, whatever those may be. The reason why it's not included in the cost estimate is because this is something that was just developed in the last couple of days. In response to getting prepared for the final board of the village board of trustees review and approval, the second meeting. So we still have some work to do on details. We acknowledge that the scope has grown, but it is something that we're going to continue to work on. It's not something that we're bidding on right now. So we have some time to kind of clear that back just a little bit. And as this design develops and this direction develops, we'll be coming back to you with some final drawings for you to comment on, as well as ADR. And you do have a final look at that as well. Anybody have any questions? Pretty clear where we're headed and what we're doing?
Looks good.
Very good.
We got very positive feedback from the village last night on this.
Good.
I think the thought of kids congregating outside and having a place to wait for their parents and talk was met very favorably. So
Good evening.
there's our cost containment man.
Exactly. We're the guys that always want to raise a little bit, and that really is a reflection of the process that's been going on the entire time that White has been progressing with the design. And they go so far, and we talk about costs, and we do adjustments, and then we do some more design, and do some more adjustments. So this is just a part of the process. Having gotten this revised design the last couple of days, we'll take a look at this and see what the costs are, incorporate that into the overall, and as we get the rest of the design finished, we'll get those costs incorporated and make sure that you get what you want and only spend what you want. So,
I think we're having a microphone problem. Oh, Craig.
No, Craig may be in the way.
I'm always in the way. I think I know where we're going.
No, we don't see one.
okay, I could speak up. So anyway, we've been working very well together to stay on budget and work along with the design team. Craig mentioned that we're about to go out for the first bid release. That's a couple days away. That goes out, and we'll be coming back in January. We have overall 3 bid releases spaced about a month apart. So January, February, March. This first bid release, we'll have steel, which is a longer lead time, so we want to get that ordered. And then we'll have the things literally where we have to come out of the ground. We'll do earthwork, concrete, and site utilities. So the first things that we really do on the job. So, and then we'll be progressing with the other releases in February and March. And we're here in mid-December, and winter hasn't come yet. So if winter doesn't really come, we can even start early. So. And I know Dr. Sophie's been excited about getting going early. So
Now would be good. Don't you?
Be careful.
My only directive would be to get some really good prices on the bids to pay for the front entrance now that it's grown in scope.
Exactly. And we'll, as the prices come in, We meet with each contractor, we make sure that they meet the scope, and we also make sure that the pricing makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense, we look at what we might need to do to either rebid or do adjustments or take alternates to get us where we need to be.
At what point in time will we, as a board, have information that will give us some sense of where we're headed for a total package price?
Well, we've got we'll continue with the budgeting, and as each bid release comes in, obviously those packages, we know those final numbers. So the final packages, the bids come in March 23rd. So we'll have those numbers. We currently in our budgeting are maintaining a 5% contingency, and even after we award the bids, we would recommend maintaining that contingency. Mm-hmm. So you never know what surprises you might run into.
5% of what number?
5% of the overall construction cost. So just the cost of construction. So right now that's about $350,000. So overall construction is in the $7 million range. So we suggest maintaining that contingency until you're out of the ground and you're done. We have significant renovation, obviously. So you want to make sure that you get through that renovation and you have discovered whatever surprises there might be. And you get that behind you, and then you can start chipping away at that contingency and put it in your pocket or spend it on other things that you want.
Does the approval process that we've been going through with the city, is that ultimately going to lock us into a particular design, like on this, or are we going to have some variability that we might be able to work with in terms of cost?
I can answer that. Basically, the suggestions that they've made have already been put in here. If you're talking about the front part design, what we've already incorporated their suggestions. Mm-hmm. But we have to bring our very final plans when we're all done. We have to bring that back to the ABR for final approval. So I would say no, we're not locked in. Okay. The key part is this page of alternates that we have that have different costs on them. Okay. Many of those were recommendations. For instance, the skylight and the extra hallway. So once we start getting more definitive numbers from the bidding process, we have to go back and revisit the alternates. And that's when we'll have better numbers to answer your question. And the board will need to make some final decisions on, are you going to do this for the front entrance? Are you going to do this for the acoustics? Or it all comes together, I've been told, at the end. I'm waiting for it. It comes together, and then we deal with another issue, and then it comes back together again. So it's following the process, I'm understanding.
Correct.
Textbook.
Yes.
If I may, as we get farther down the road, there are less decisions that you will be asking you to make, and the design will be getting more and more fixed. And I think at that point, once we get the ABR's final approval, that's kind of what it's going to look like. Mm-hmm. So,
roughly, what month are we talking about? Are we talking about March or June, or very, very roughly? August?
No, probably by the February 14th.
Okay, thank you.
There's a lot going on right now. Yeah. The one thing that I will do for all of you, in case any of you are interested, the bid opening meetings are already scheduled. They will be held in the basement conference room at our district office. And you are more than welcome to come. They're public meetings. And Terry has those dates. I'll get them back from her. But we're all set for those two.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question, Craig? Mm-hmm. This came up in one of our team meetings, I think not here, but since this design may become fixed, I don't feel like I should ask it now. Somebody was asking if those planters would give somebody the boost they needed to get up on the roof. Did we resolve that?
We lowered them.
Okay, thanks.
And we still have some refinement to do there too, though. We want to make sure that's a very low canopy.
It's hard to tell from the picture. If
it is, yeah. I think it was up about another 2.5 feet. From what you originally saw, actually what was on the previous drawing. Even in the previous drawing, we lowered that too to see what it would look like. So it's lower than what you remember and what we presented the first time. Yes.
I love planters there, by the way. I think it looks great.
Soften it up.
Yeah.
you're going to be responsible for watering plants.
No, actually, you live the closest. So we don't have to do about
We want, actually, what would be wonderful is if we had somebody propose a very low maintenance plant program for those, because we don't seem to do well
I
with.
hope there's an opportunity for the kids and the teachers to do something and incorporate it as part of the curriculum. That might be something to think about.
it does maybe low maintenance. I agree. So, if there's no questions, I need to bring the board up to date on this latest issue. And I had to write it all out because it's very complicated. I've had to do a lot of research on this. As many or most of you know, when renovations were done back in 08, 09 time, and the band room wing was added, there were some major noise issues with the new chiller that was installed. I think you all know that. As I understand it, the noise was so unbelievable and greatly impacted the surrounding neighbors' way of life, and it became kind of a community issue. It took a couple of years and about $150,000 total, which included some other things like air conditioning, the servers, etc., to resolve the issue. But the whole situation really resulted in these neighbors not trusting the school district and really being cautious about any construction that's done. Fast forward now to this renovation. When the priorities were finally sorted through last spring, the designs were being made and delineated. We did make some final decisions on 2 classroom wings that were added to the plan. As we met with White and as White worked with their own engineers, it became apparent sometime in about November time period that the current chiller can take care of the new fine arts wing, so it takes care of one of the wings, but the new classroom wing will need its own 25-ton rooftop unit air conditioner. See, I said it the right way. It is important to note that this is an air conditioner. It's not a chiller. That's an important distinction when we are discussing the noise and the sound. The neighbors around LBMS are really concerned that they will need to live through another noise issue. While we have new administrators and have a brand new architect, their concerns exist, and I really do understand why they have them. We have pledged that we will keep them informed regularly, start our weekly newsletter, and have weekly construction meetings. One of the items the group asked us to do is to engage in hiring a Mark Rubino, who was the contractor for the resolution of the chiller situation, when it was finally resolved way back when Ben Martindale was the interim superintendent. As I understand it from Ben, because I talked to him several times today, there was a Dr. Schomer, who is a recognized acoustic engineer professor, who designed the resolution of the system, and then Mark Rubino and his company came in, furnished the equipment, and made the resolution complete. It is important to note that this project was not bid out. Ben shared that it met the conditions of being under the threshold legally. That threshold could have been one of 2 things. The first exemption for not going out to bid is a threshold of under $25,000. You don't have to bid those out. And the second exemption would have been under $50,000 for a one-time project. And when they did the chiller, that was really considered a one-time project. Our renovation is not considered a one-time project because it's part of an overall big plan of the renovation. Craig called Mr. Rubino several weeks ago, and Mr. Rubino did not call him back. Craig contacted Dr. Schomer, who is now retired a second time from his second career, and he usually doesn't take on additional work, but because he knows the project, he is available to consult or at least review via telephone and conference calls. So therefore, we went ahead and White secured the services of an international firm, Shen Milsom Wilkie Acoustic Engineers, and I will send you a link with some information on that. One of the neighbors, after I shared this information, then went ahead and called Mr. Rubino again, since they really would like us to use their services. This came after I had emailed the neighbors that we had secured our consultant and our acoustical engineer.
So here's the situation and some facts that you need to know as a board. First, White Architects secures the acoustical engineer since they hold our contracts. Their name goes on the project and it helps with liability issues. So we're not the ones that secure that. White secures that. I can recommend to White that it engages the services of Mr. Rubino as a noise consultant on this project. Mr. Rubino would serve as a consultant only because the board cannot directly award his company a contract to perform work due to the school code bidding requirements. In this instance, the services of Mr. Rubino's company as a contractor would be considered part of the entire renovation project and thus not qualify under a bidding exception. That particular paragraph is written right by our attorney, who I talked to several times today. You should be aware of all these factors as we make this decision. White has secured Chen Milsom Wilkie acoustic engineers, and they will serve as the lead consultant in our renovation on acoustics. My recommendation is that Craig calls Mr. Rubino directly and asks if he would serve as a consultant as a peer review on this case. That way we are having a second set of eyes and experience to get the best information possible. He may or may not take that as a consultant. If he chooses not to do this, I would then direct Craig to find another acoustical engineer to provide that second set of eyes on the project, because I think it's needed in this situation. After we secure our acoustical engineers, I want them to meet with us to get history, review the plans, and meet with White Architects. Then I would like them to meet with the neighbors to hear their concerns prior to finishing up the plans. From what I hear them saying, and I agree with them, we need the advice of these engineers prior to even determining the placement of the air conditioning units on the roof. When plans are finalized, based on all of this work and input, I'd like the acoustical consultants to come back once again and explain what was decided for the project as far as sound abatement. Finally, we will need to get decibel readings and meet with the neighbors again at the end of the project. It is important that we remember a couple things. We need to keep the needs of the students in the school, as well as the surrounding neighbors, in mind to determine final placement of the air conditioning rooftop unit, as well as how to best wrap it. There's blankets and different things you can do to keep it quieter too, or contain any noise or sound. That's number one. Number two, we need to follow any bidding laws and keep everything upfront and very transparent. Number three, we should keep in mind that we are pushing the budget again toward its top, because everything that we continue to engage for acoustics costs money. But we also know that we need to do what's necessary for the students and for the surrounding neighbors. I'm learning, and I'm learning this on a daily basis, that this is a very complicated situation. I know a lot more about noise abatement today than I knew yesterday than I knew the day before. While the village board approved our renovation plans conditioned on working with the acoustical engineer and meeting state and federal guidelines, we also need to do what's best to be good neighbors. When the plans are totally finalized, we will need to bring our final plans back again, as Craig said, and provide this information to the AVR for its final review. I think as board members you need to know all those facts, because we do not want this to be a community issue. We want it to be an air conditioning unit that's installed, that's not only meets state and federal guidelines, but also is met to the satisfaction of the neighbors who live their life in their homes right behind the school.
And just for you guys who weren't here 4 years ago, Leanne and Susan and I went through this, and I don't know about those guys, but I'm twitching just kind of hearing about it. It was not an experience that we really want to go through again after the fact the way it went before. And this issue has touched the nerve with these guys. I've been in contact with a number of people. They've been on a number of village board meetings and prior school board meetings. There's been tons of email traffic about this, so it's definitely something people are aware of and concerned about in the community around the schools. So.
Are there just a question out of naivete more than anything else? Are there federal or state standards with respect to decibel levels that are acceptable? Because I can hear the train from my house, for example, in the middle of the night. I don't know if that's acceptable or not, but So, but you understand, or you have the guidelines and,
We do, and that came up at the zoning board of reviews.
And the neighborhood meeting also.
And then in the neighborhood meeting.
so our goal would be to be under those high levels of whatever the level is. If that's at the peak of its use.
It's very complicated, but there are different frequencies that are attached to the piece of equipment, and each one of those frequencies has a different decibel level. The state requires at certain frequencies what those maximum decibel levels need to be or can be at the property line, and so that's what we're bound to as a team and as a district, and that is what is required by the village.
Okay, so there are standards. I mean, every neighbor might have a different perception of what's loud and what's not.
Oh, I'm sure.
My recollection is that we were well below those standards when we did our work a few years ago, and we're in much better shape than the regulation. I think when we started, there was one frequency at which we were close, but I think, and it was an annoying sound. If you walked over there and heard it, it was annoying. It was like a high-pitched, kind of whining, mechanical sound. We've kind of resolved those. I don't know that the standards really give them the protection that they would want to have.
And I would agree with you on that.
And this is an AC unit compared to the chiller. And is it true that, if my recollection is correct, we're talking about a completely different side of the building where this would be?
Yes.
It'd be towards actually in view here. Is that true?
It is to the upper right is where the
so it'd be completely on the other side of the building. I mean, this is going to be something that's much further away from residential space than where the chiller.
Well, there's
neighbors
right behind. There's neighbors on that side.
Very
as well.
close to neighbors that are behind that part of the school.
I forget the name of that street back there.
Oh, back there.
Yes.
And so one of the questions that we'll be asking our consultant to look at is not only ways of mitigating the sound that's attached to the compressors or the fans and what have you, which is a different kind of sound than the high-pitched noise that a chiller would make. We're also going to engage them in conversation about the location and whether it's up high, low, what's the best location, and so forth. So, they're very, very conversant in that kind of thing, very knowledgeable.
Any questions?
Anybody have any questions?
We're working on it.
Comments, concerns? The board is committed to being good neighbors.
Yep.
So I just want everybody in the surrounding neighborhood to know that. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys. Appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Okay, we've moved things around a lot. Where are we?
We are now
7A,
at the
right?
enrichment program.
Okay, so we're going to move on to agenda item 7A with some guests from Northwestern University to discuss our enrichment program.
Good evening. I'm Kelly Bay, Curriculum Coordinator, Teacher Leader for the school district. Just going to do a quick introduction and then I'll let Eric take over. So our work and our partnership with Northwestern University Center for Talent Development is committed to communicating updates to the board and the public about progress that we're making and what we've been engaged in over the last year. So this evening, Eric Calvert, Associate Director for the Center for Talent Development, is here to report out. He's prepared a presentation that was shared with our administrative team, as well as a couple of slides have been presented to our parents interested in enrichment group. So the agreement is an overall update. Tonight he's really going to zoom in on some assessments that our students have engaged in, as well as a survey that parents had taken last spring. So Eric Calvert, I'll let you take it from here.
While we realize that there is a lot of very, very valuable information in this presentation, Eric is only going to be highlighting a few of the things in this presentation, so make sure you ask any questions you have tonight while our experts are here.
Okay. I'm not able to
Is something blocking? You know what? Somebody may have to flip for him.
Thank you for the opportunity to come and present kind of an update on where we are with this project. As you might recall, we started working with the district a couple of years ago at this point, and we did kind of a formative assessment a couple of years ago to kind of capture some preliminary data in terms of how gifted and academically advanced students in the district were doing in comparison with students in other similar districts. And then we also did kind of an initial survey of stakeholders, but we've continued that process now. So I'm here this evening to kind of share some highlights in terms of things that we've seen in terms of progress on those original set of goals. So the follow-up survey and the follow-up study that we've been doing has a couple of components that mirror the original formative assessment that we did. There's an above grade level assessment component, and we use the ACT and then another assessment called the Explore test, which you can kind of think of it's another assessment that comes from ACT, so it's based on the same model, so you can track students' progress over time between those two assessments as they age up. And then we've also now administered a survey twice to parents and other stakeholders in the district that are based on research-based standards that come from the National Association for Gifted Children, as well as some things that were identified as priorities in our initial conversations with the leadership team here in the district. So I'll talk to you a little bit about some of the assessment data first. I know we've given you quite a bit of detail in the report that you have in front of you, so I won't spend a lot of time on each of these individual slides, but I will highlight a couple of things that I think are important takeaways as we get into this. So we use the above grade level assessments because they have very high ceilings, and when you're trying to look at whether or not curriculum and other supplemental programming is effective with advanced students, even though some of the assessments like the MAP, for example, are very, very useful and very, very reliable assessments when you're trying to look at the extent to which students are doing well with grade level expectations. If you want to look at our students all the way up the continuum in terms of the most advanced students in ability, also having opportunities to grow and make progress over time by using these assessments that are actually designed for older students. You stretch that ceiling out so you can really see whether or not all of those students are advancing. In our programs at the Center for Talent Development at Northwestern, we use these same assessments to help make decisions about readiness for participation in some of the most advanced courses that we offer through our programs at the university, and then also to provide guidance to individual families that come to us about appropriate educational choices for their students. And we provide that kind of data to the district as well to look at planning for individual students, but because we have a critical mass of students here in the district through our work, we're also able to look at some things at sort of the school and district levels as well. So we now have 2 full years of data with students in the district. We basically assessed the students that were at or above the 90th percentile on grade level assessments, and now we've tracked those students twice with a second round of assessment. And so what I want to focus on is, breeze through these to highlight. I think these are the 2 most interesting slides in the presentation in terms of the assessment data, and I think they show good news. So what this slide shows you is how students in Lake Bluff who were already at or above the 90th percentile on those grade level assessments that are administered to all students, how those students have done in comparison with other high-performing students in other school districts that are demographically similar to yours.
Can you just give me a sense of how many students are actually in each of those columns?
Okay, We have around 100 students each year, and I can give you those exact numbers that participate.
So math, reading, it's each 100 each?
Yes, so there are, there's a math and a reading component of the assessments, and then the composite is kind of a combination. And so with the exception of I think maybe one student that didn't complete enough items.
But roughly 100.
Yes.
And in the total comparison, how many kids were in that?
About 15,000 students each year participate in the program overall. We actually did kind of two comparison sets for Lake Bluff. One is looking at all 15,000 students that participate in these assessments in the Midwest. But then we also did kind of a bootstrapped comparison district where we only looked at other students in districts that had similar median incomes and similar levels of poverty. And I'll show you some things from that in just a second as well. But the students on this slide are just your own students, but what we're pleased to report is that your students who tested with us last year, who against the comparison group that we suggested or we looked at, were scoring at about the 59th percentile in comparison with other high ability students, which is good. That's above average, so that was a good place to start. But we've actually seen those students in your school district move up in comparison with other students who are like them in other schools. So what that suggests is that it's not just that these kids were bright when they came to you and weren't just doing well because their parents are doing a lot of things, but the things that are happening in your schools are actually helping them grow at a faster rate. So this is a good report. Similarly, we saw kind of the same pattern on reading. These are the students who, so in this particular slide, we're looking at students that are in that were in the top 5% of the distribution overall. And again, so we're seeing faster growth here than in other other schools.
Just out of curiosity, is it just coincidence that the percentages are exactly the same for both math and reading in our group?
Yes, yeah.
Pretty coincidental. Huh?
It is.
We try to do everything very evenly here.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're sharing the love across the curriculum, I guess, but yeah, it is a coincidence, but an interesting one. And again, so in this slide, we're looking at how students in Lake Bluff in this most recent round of assessment did in comparison with other students. So the top 5% of students in math here are significantly outperforming not only other gifted students around the Midwest, but also other gifted and academically advanced students in districts that are economically and demographically like yours. So again, the takeaways here is that first of all, your high achieving students as a group are outperforming the other students. The things that you're doing here are making a positive impact, and that the differences that exist within the top 5 to 10% of students in your district are educationally significant from one another. And one of the things that we talked about in our initial report as one of our key findings was that there were a lot of good things happening for that group overall, but there was still a handful of students at the very, very high end that did need some additional opportunities for support and some additional opportunities for acceleration. And so the Kelly and the leadership team in the district have been kind of working hard this last year on kind of developing some procedures and guidelines and assessments to make sure that those students are served effectively as well. Then the second part of the research that we've been doing has focused on stakeholder perceptions. And so in this cycle, we looked back at the same criteria that we used in the first cycle to see whether or not people feel like that families receive more support than they felt they were getting previously, and also do educators feel like they're receiving more support, getting the resources, professional development they need to do their work with this particular group of students. So I'll highlight just a few things here as well. But again, if you have specific questions about things in the survey, I'll be happy to answer those, or we can respond to some things by email too. I know you have a full agenda this evening. But one of the first, and each of these items were on a 5-point scale, with 5 being strongly agree and 1 being strongly disagree. So in the original administration of the survey, perceptions were overall very negative on many of these items, but you'll see as we go through each of these that perceptions on the part of stakeholders have improved in the wake of work that's happening and choices that you've made and supported since we've been working together. You'll also see that there's still room to grow. So there's continuing work to do, but I will share that when we looked at all of the items on the survey, there wasn't a single item where the district went backwards in terms of stakeholder perceptions, and in many cases we saw significant improvement from 2013 to 2014.
Again, another question. So does 3 mean you agree? If 1 strongly disagree and 1 strongly 3 is about
so 3 is neutral.
So people still don't agree.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
On some of these items, you'll see on a lot of them.
This is after only 1 year.
Right. I understand. I just
Yeah. Right. That's a good point. So you'll notice that as we move through these, that there are a lot of positive outcomes that have happened based on the increased effort to communicate with families about opportunities within the district, as well as the progress. And we know that there have been multiple reports that the district has shared with the Parents Interested in Enrichment group, and a lot of work on the website, newsletters, other communications, so that parents understand the work that's happening over time and the choices that are made, so they feel. And in the comments on the surveys, one of the things that kind of jumped out was in the original survey, many families felt like decisions were being made about their children arbitrarily and without enough transparency. So in some cases, families felt like some children were getting services and support based on who they were or who they knew versus their actual documented educational needs. So I think there's been real progress on that area, on that front, over the last area. We've also seen some increase in perceptions of the degree to which parents feel that their children are being differentiated for in their regular classrooms, in addition to positive perceptions of things that are happening specifically through the enrichment team. You'll also see some good news here about perceptions of this student group being a priority within the district. Progress in terms of perceptions of school culture and climate with respect to supporting very high levels of academic achievement. This one was a particularly strong increase, and I think based on the comments, a lot of the credit for this growth really goes to what Kelly has done in terms of putting together stakeholder groups and having those active lines of communication open. Overall, I would say kind of the consensus that we got from the parent surveys and comments were that parents now trust that you're moving in the right direction, but because there were some kind of false starts in the past on progress, they're still holding your feet to the fire and want to see things continue to make progress over time. Again, here we see progress in terms of the communication. Other findings from the survey, parents did still continue to indicate to us that accessing more advanced programming remains a high priority for them. So they do want to see that students have access, particularly those most advanced students, have access to above grade level curriculum in addition to supplemental enrichment with the grade level content. And we also had a lot of positive comments about the new website, the new newsletters that are going out, and appreciation for getting regular updates from the school district in terms of action steps that have been taken on the basis of some of our original recommendations on the first year of data. So we would encourage you to continue that work, continue to put that focus on transparency and active communication, continue work that has started and continue this year in terms of providing additional support for the teachers other than members of the enrichment team that are providing the majority of instruction to these students, as well as iterating and being more strategic with the work that the enrichment team is providing directly with students. We would also encourage you to continue to kind of formalize those processes for academic acceleration that would involve changes of placement, where a student might move for a particular subject from, for example, a 4th grade classroom to a 5th grade classroom, or for some of those very advanced students, might be good candidates for grade skipping. But to document that, we've had the opportunity to have some really good conversations with the district team about ways to make good decisions about those kinds of whole grade acceleration, as well as looking at some specific criteria to look for those students that might need acceleration in math specifically. And then we would also recommend that you continue to monitor the long-term outcomes, both in terms of making sure that the action steps that have been taken so far continue to have the results that you want, so that you know that you're using your resources efficiently and effectively. But also we think that there's potentially a really good data story to tell in the first year of the focus groups that we did with parents. There were many parents that were very explicit about the fact that they wanted to make sure that when their students matriculated to the high school district, that their students were entering on par or better than the students from the other district, so that they would be able to access the highest level curriculum as well. And there seemed to be the conception, at least, that the other district, students coming from the other district were more advanced. But when we actually look at the data and compare you apples to apples with other economically similar districts, like this would probably be information that I would want to share with my real estate agent, about living in this community. So a very positive outcome. So I'll stop there. But if you have specific questions, I'd be happy to take a few minutes to try to answer some of those.
I have a question for you. So you do this research, and then do you ever give recommendations to administrators or to the school board? I'm thinking of, for example, our strategic plan, which needs to be redone maybe start a year from now or somewhere thereabouts. I'd be interested, I guess, to hear if that's something that you guys do, what we might do to target some things that would really move us ahead.
Sure. And we've been actually having a lot of conversations. Myself and my colleague Randy Blair have had the opportunity to spend a lot of time working with your leadership team and with Kelly specifically, looking at this data in more depth, and then sharing a lot of best practice resources that we think would be good fits for the school. So we've made some very specific recommendations about how to identify students that might be in need of acceleration, and there'll probably be more information coming about that shortly, but a lot of good work has happened on that front. And then we've also made some specific recommendations in terms of ways to facilitate professional development. We've actually done some of that professional development directly, but have also been able to guide the district towards resources that we think would be a particularly good fit given the demographics, the size of the district, and sort of the philosophy and values that we saw reflected in the focus group interviews that we've done, as well as the surveys that we've administered a couple of times. Because one of the things that we said, in the outset of this work was that in a lot of schools we see kind of programming parachuted in, but because it's not consistent with the priorities and the values of the community, that when the person that developed it leaves, or you have a change in your district leadership team, a lot of work that's been done to develop a program is obliterated, and you start back from square one. And in kind of our research into the history of what's happened before, that's been a phenomena that has happened here as well in the past. And so we've been trying to do things that are really focused on long-term sustainability, so that you can see that progress over time versus continually be hitting the reset button with the programs.
And does some of that have to do with having the plans in writing?
It does, yeah. And one of the things that really jumped out in the first year was, even though a lot of the things that, when we interviewed the people that were involved in the decision-making process, the decisions that were being made were logical, but because there wasn't a lot of transparency about those decisions, the perceptions of how those decisions were made were negative, even though the logic behind those decisions was often very good. But I would say that things have kind of been working on two tracks. One, actually, improving the processes for making more informed decisions, as well as being much more transparent and active in communicating with families about the things that are happening with their students. But that communication piece, again, was one of our most important critical recommendations in the first round, in an area where we've seen a lot of progress, in the last year. But then continuing the work on the assessment piece to kind of strike that right balance, where you have all of the information that you need to make a good decision on behalf of students, but without spending so much time and so many resources on assessment that the assessment process actually competes with time and resources that would be invested in actual teaching and learning. So I think we've made good progress on that, and I think the district is on a path towards adopting something that is very closely in alignment with research-based best practices on a national basis. And acceleration is an area where I spent a lot of time in a lot of different school districts and been involved in a lot of research. So I'm optimistic that where the district will land will take you in a very positive direction with respect to that subgroup of your high-performing students.
Do we currently have, kind of playing off your question, I like that kind of very high level, currently have goals for this program? A way to assess affection? I mean, I see the progress.
Right now,
are there specific goals laid out for the program?
Our goals are listed in the strategic plan when we specifically have to track those kids that qualify for acceleration or enrichment. We need to make sure that that population grows every year. So that's our specific goal right now. I think the informal goal in relation to that is making sure that everyone is aware of what we're doing. Oftentimes things were going on in the classroom that the parents had no idea about. And so, as Eric had said, not only are they working with us on the processes for identification, what we do when we do identify, who delivers the services, how we're going to deliver the services, but we're also, Kelly's done a great job of working with the teachers and the staff at both buildings to communicate out, to begin communicating out. We're not totally there yet on what exactly is happening in each of the classrooms. This year, based upon Northwestern's recommendations, we are actually pulling kids out and accelerating in either math or in language arts, mostly in the math area. And as Eric also shared, Kelly started a blog for parents that they can subscribe to so they can hear of other things that are going on. So remember, this is only our second year in this of working with Northwestern.
And as we continue forward on this and we get to our revising of our strategic plan, do you see a place for, we're trying to look at data, we're trying to stay at a high level where we don't get too down in the weeds. So an easy way for the board to observe progress, like some of the survey, do you intend to keep doing those same kinds of surveys and measure the same outcomes so that we could incorporate some of those things into strategic planning?
That would be our recommendation. Yeah.
Yes. And we'll be at a point that we can do that in our next strategic plan.
Yeah, so
I think Julie has a question.
Well, I'm still puzzled. I've heard everything you've said, but I guess I just want to understand where I see the data collection and the reporting and the survey and things like that. All good to know. Where then do you and the administration take over, or is it a full partnership in terms of here's what we're going to do differently? We're going to have this program. We're going to have this tracking. We're going to have. Is that something that you're involved in? Mm-hmm. You said you identify resources. Are those internal or external?
We really do that all together.
Yeah, and we've been, kind of our role in Northwestern's role in this has been kind of twofold. One is being kind of an independent third party that can objectively look from the outside at these perceptions and to be able to bring in some good comparison data that you otherwise wouldn't really have access to with the large-scale assessments that most schools participate in. But then once we have that data, then to be able to then surface from national best practice as well as experience working with other schools, specific recommendations for where we think the school can get the most bang for its buck in terms of grouping students, in terms of investing professional development, in terms of providing targeted support by members of the enrichment team and from Kelly and from Kevin for specific teachers to meet the needs of specific students, in this process. So, for example, in terms of the work that we're doing around identifying students that would benefit from specific opportunities for acceleration, we last year did kind of an initial professional development event where we just kind of shared what the national research indicates as best practice and some of the recommendations from the National Association for Gifted Children. And then I recently came back where since we now have data to kind of highlight where specific things align, in the data with, national research kind of identify best practices. The district has been kind of digesting that now, and is going to give us kind of, a preliminary action plan kind of identified based on what we shared in round 2, kind of where their priorities are and what kind of resonated with them in that second round of conversation. And then in round 3, we'll bring back an even smaller number of options and actually do some simulating. If we took the actual student data and we took, option A and option B for making these choices, here are the numbers of students that we would wind up with, and therefore, here are the opportunities to figure out where critical masses of students lie. Here are the support systems that would need to be put in place to implement those effectively. So I think we've kind of gone from very broad scale, kind of preliminary snapshot, just looking at what people in your community want and value, and where students stood in terms of the academic measures before any work began, And then we've done a second round of that now to look at progress, and then hopefully we'll have an opportunity to do even a third round of that at some point in the future after some of these things that have been in planning stages last year and this year are then actually implemented.
Okay, that's what because that's what I want to hear. I hear a lot about data, and we're looking over time, and we're comparing to other groups. A lot of data collection. Just an example of just what kinds of programs have you recommended that have evolved from all of that? That's just what I'm trying to get a sense of.
I guess one example of that would be the need to put in place opportunities for change of placement kinds of acceleration. There was already a lot of good things happening in terms of differentiating curriculum within classrooms, but that seemed to be serving well a lot of students that were kind of closer to that 90th percentile and a little bit above. But we also found when we did the above grade level assessment last year that there were about half a dozen students in your, I think it's actually 8 students in your middle school that were already scoring higher on the ACT than most incoming freshmen at the University of Illinois. And so for those students, doing enrichment of the grade level curriculum isn't really enough to stretch them to the full level. So for a percentage of your high ability students, that acceleration was recommended, and that was something that was surfaced through the data collection. So that's happening. And then the work on developing differentiated curriculum is a longer project because curriculum's typically planned in a sequence for a whole year. So it really takes in year 1 you kind of identify the needs. Year 2 is kind of doing that restructuring, and then year 3 is when it actually starts appearing in a fully developed form in classrooms. So kind of where we are right now is in year 2. So there have been some specific goals, identified, and then a lot of professional development work that's been happening with the teachers. But then, if you're continuing to make progress, I would suggest that, next year is where you should really start expecting to see, in a very concrete way, here's what our teachers are doing in 4th grade math class for our advanced students. That is very substantively different on a very ongoing basis than what would be happening for other students. So we'll have hopefully more news about that specifically to report in a few months. But I would say right now the communication pieces and the acceleration pieces are the most concrete, and then the enhancements to the differentiated instruction in the classroom we would really expect to see bearing more fruit in the upcoming school year.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? We really value our partnership with Northwestern. Eric and Randy have been great with us, and we continue. Kelly meets with them regularly, and we will continue to be looking at our program. This is very good news considering we're only in the 2nd year. I think you nailed it, Eric. There had been so many different things done in the past that we need to determine a baseline and just get in and start doing some movement in this area. And so we've made some good progress in the past 2 years. Mike,
you're good at that.
I think the biggest thing to highlight is not that we would see not necessarily major changes, but it's the communication of even existing things that are happening, but being more public about what those things are. So teachers are meeting the needs of students, but parents don't necessarily know what's being done. And so that would be, I think, the biggest thing that we would see is not major shifts in programming, but here's what's happening, here's how we know who it's happening to, and here are the results that we're seeing because of it.
we're really building our system.
Can I ask a more of a taxpayer kind of
I
question?
was just about what's the ROI here?
Well, yeah, that's a good add-on, but did you see, I guess the question mostly for Jean and Kelly,
Do you see a point where there's maybe never a complete handoff, but a handoff to district personnel to take this program and run with it? Like you'll be up to speed to the point where we'll understand it enough to do it on our own, or is this a cooperative agreement in perpetuity?
And I'll answer that. We're not far enough along to be able to answer that. I think we still have a lot of work to do, and Northwestern's a national expert in this area, so I think we'll have a better idea maybe by the time we do our strategic plan again. But it's certainly something that we're always going to need to keep up to date. As far as an ROI, we're not prepared to answer that because I don't have any dollar figures. But
so that's what I'd like as a follow-up. Is I'd like to understand what the cost is. Obviously, we could all do better if we all had one-to-one educational IEPs, but we haven't gone that direction, right?
So what are you looking for the total cost?
Yeah, what do we think we've invested so far, and what do we think the net difference in having such a program will be going forward?
We're not going to be able to give you the net difference right now. We can
estimate.
estimate.
I don't expect you to answer it now. I'd like to explore it further because these numbers are interesting. Even additional programs are interesting. What strikes me is the differentiation in the classroom is the most meaningful for the most number of students. We are really hitting the ball out of the park, it seems like, on that differentiation, and that's where the big bang for the buck comes. However, when we're looking at beyond differentiation in the classroom, any programming beyond that, what do we think the additional cost, putting aside the ramp-up time that we've had to spend with Northwestern? Going forward, what does it cost to run a gifted program outside of differentiation in the classroom? Or I just don't know. I mean, it might be an order of magnitude of a few $1,000s, or it might be much more than that.
I would say one of the reasons why we recommended acceleration, looking specifically at options, particularly for those kind of change of placement kind of acceleration, at least in terms of putting a structure in place, is that whether or not you have a formal gifted program and whether or not you do a ton of supplemental stuff outside of what happens in school, if you have, you're not going to not have a 5th grade next year. And so that's an option for meeting the needs of students who would, on the basis of their birth date, normally be 4th graders. In addition to identifying that option as a best practice, at least as an element of a continuum of services for gifted students. We also recommend it because it's something that every district can afford to do. I mean, the costs of it are basically just the assessment to determine whether or not it's a good idea, and then provide a little bit of transitional support. But if you make the decision well and you make that initial handoff well, the ongoing cost of continuing to provide that challenge to that student is essentially zero. And so, we are definitely attuned to not trying to steer you towards building a program that, if things go poorly, none of us know, what level of funding is going to be coming from the state in upcoming years.
We know that.
We want to make sure that what we steer you towards is reflective of research-based practice, but is also something that addresses the highest priorities of your stakeholders, and that you'll be able to continue over time. Continuing churn in what's happening in state support, and none of us really know kind of what the future holds with assessment. I will say that one of the things that is coming out in the federal replacement for the No Child Left Behind Act, it's actually a requirement that I think there's an implementation cycle for states, but that districts and states will actually not only report out the percentage of students that are proficient from individual subgroups, but they'll actually have to show how students from the No Child Left Behind subgroups are falling into 5 achievement levels in the continuum. So there's going to be additional federally and state motivated data and documentation of how these students are doing. So it's probably a good idea to try to stay ahead of the curve in terms of monitoring and knowing that you're not just doing a good job in terms of being above average at the middle, but that you're actually advancing students across that achievement continuum.
Anybody else have any follow-up questions?
Is there a way to see some work product or something like that? Not to get in the weeds, but just to get a better sense of what we're getting other than the data. Because, it's good to see the data. The numbers were interesting.
Kelly actually did a whole presentation on it
that was
last year, so
Kelly,
maybe we should bring that back.
I wonder what Northwestern does behind that. That's what I'm trying to get a sense of.
Because I think you covered in your presentation most of what Northwestern had worked on it. So I'd be happy to resend that to all of you. And if you want Kelly to cover that in the January meeting, we could easily do that.
Well, I don't know that I want a whole big presentation on it, just some better sense of where, the sense of cooperation between where the administration's work starts and where Northwestern work.
There was a great report, and actually it's on the Parents Interested in Enrichment webpage that Kelly developed, but Kevin and Kelly developed a presentation that actually got updated this year, where they showed our original recommendations, then action steps that have been taken in response to those recommendations, and then sort of the beginnings of the second cycle. We're hoping that they'll continue to kind of update that, as work is done over time, because I think that's a really important piece. We've actually started following that page at Northwestern as sort of one of the ways that we kind of keep track of things that are happening here, so that we can be really targeted when we come up to do professional development consulting, that we're bringing things that are relevant to what's happened since we've left, so we're not working in a vacuum. But that's a great, if you haven't seen that and you haven't been to that website, I would strongly encourage you to go and take a look at it. I will admit that a lot of that stuff isn't our work, but rather work that district personnel have done in response to our work, but we kind of look at that as a positive sign, because it means it's not just us coming in and making recommendations and then nothing happening, and then us coming back in a year and making more recommendations, but that we can actually be iterative in the work that we do at the school.
Maybe you guys can follow up and share something with the board, because we got to keep going.
I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Okay, we're going to move on to Dr. Kevin Rubenstein is going to review our park scores.
This is like the most exciting thing ever. I mean, you guys have been waiting all night for this, and we have been waiting several months. And the State Board of Education was so nice that they just released them a little bit early for all of us. And so I get to, talk about those this evening. So just a little bit of a preview of what we're going to talk about this evening with Park. I'm going to walk you through some of our scores, and then also talk with you about our school report cards, which is a mandated board function that you guys get to review those, and then direct Jean and I to post those on our website. So about the Park assessment, it was administered in March and May over multiple days. It's given to all students in grades 3 through 8. And this year was given in several other states across the country. As it was developed, it was internationally benchmarked, so it's very, very different than the ISAT, which it replaced. It's scored by an independent group, and the threshold scores are set by the consortium. So one of the things that you'll see in just a second here is that rather than talking about sort of an external benchmark, we're always talking about the number of students who are on track to meet college and career readiness standards. So those threshold scores for what's considered college and career ready are set by the consortium and that independent group. And lest there be any confusion, Illinois has a contract with Park through 2017, though there is some talk about what that will actually look like. So for example, this year Massachusetts is doing a combination where they are taking questions from the park and developing their own assessment. But we are with Park through 2017. So Park scores range from a low of 650 to a high of 850. The score ranges are then broken down into 5 different categories of college and career readiness. So in Illinois, the State Board of Education set a score of 4 as the minimum that you needed to have in order to be considered college or career ready. I note up on the screen the Ohio threshold, which is because of the fact that Ohio, in their wonderful sense of the world, decided that their students only needed to be at a 3 in order to be college and career ready. So there is a lot of
doing more with less.
Exactly. So people have been joking that we should go to Ohio. We would probably be better golfers there. On the same golf course, that sort of thing. It is just interesting to note that as we review our scores, because there's some discrepancy amongst the states about what really is college and career ready, and especially during the first year of the assessment, that's sort of an arbitrary number.
How many states are Park again? Take Park again?
Last year there were a total of 9 different states. That has been reduced. There are still 2 big consortiums, the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium and Park, and states have come and gone, and we're adding smaller groups now. So,
but how many is there? 7?
I want to say that there's 7 plus the federal government and the Department of Defense, all of their military schools use Park. That was the addition this year.
I think it's also important, as I shared with Kevin, many districts surrounding us, because of their scores, are actually reporting 3s, 4s, and 5s. So they're taking Ohio's lead. Even though Illinois is only recognizing 4s and 5s, they're reporting out 3s. So you need to know that, because in the discussions, they may be sharing things with you that are really not comparing apples to oranges.
The other thing that I will say is that I'm going to share these scores.
Apples to apples.
Apples to apples. I'm going to share these scores, and I am actually really kind of disappointed in the fact that our data story, as Eric talked about, is not being shared more widely across the area, because we really have some great things going on in our schools. So scores by grade level in English language arts. We have these are going to look very, very different from the ISAT, because this is a new baseline for us. So the green and the blue are the 4s and 5s, and so across the grade levels, we have some really very, very strong scores. It ranges from grade level to grade level, but overall, we are doing quite well. When you compare us with the state, the percentage of students at the state level across the state who were at a level 4 or 5 was somewhere between 31 and 37% at each grade level. So we are doing well above that. Typically, our average score is around 20 points higher than the state average, so we're even a little bit above that for this year, which is great. And then just an easy way to see it, the blue here is the percentage of students who are at 4 or 5 by grade level in ELA. So if you include those oranges, which is level 3, we are right back to where we started with ISAT, or even a little bit above, and so our students continue to do quite well. Yes.
That's what I was wondering, the ISAT, relative ISAT scores seem to align pretty well with the 3, 4, and 5 score.
With the 3, 4, and 5, correct, yes. And you will see that even more so when we look at math here. Our math scores, Eric touched on this very, very briefly in his presentation, but I would say that hardly a week goes by right now that either Jean, myself, or Kelly does not get a phone call from another district asking what we're doing with our math programs, because they are looking at our scores, they are hearing from other districts about what's going on, they're pulling us aside at conferences, they're doing all of those sorts of things, because we've really got some outstanding things going on with our math program in both schools, really specifically though at the middle school. To have almost 18% of the students in grades 7 and 8 at a level 5 is, I don't know that we'll find another district in the state that is even close to that.
It's interesting that the 3rd grade math is hanging in there with the other grade levels, but in reading they were far behind.
Yes. So we've been reviewing all of these data, and what I will say, there's so much to say about this, but 3rd grade specifically took the assessment on iPads during this last school year. And when you are writing on an iPad, and they had keyboards attached to them for the assessment because they were required to, when you're writing in there, the box looks particularly small that you're writing your written expression piece into. And so that seems to have played into some of the scores in 3rd grade, where it wouldn't necessarily make a difference on the math scores in 3rd grade. So,
and the other grade levels did not take them on the iPad?
The other grade levels took them on regular laptop computers. So, something that we are looking at for this year. And then again, scores by grade level in math. We still comparatively did very, very well, and continue to do well. It will move forward to everybody's favorite part, which is our peer comparisons, and we really do have a lot to be excited about here. So just a little bit about our benchmark districts. Lake Bluff has a set of common benchmark districts with similar demographics, and we use these with negotiations during the last school year. We looked at their salary schedules and their insurance packages and those sorts of things. They are high achieving districts with similar demographics of varying sizes. There's also another smaller number of districts that are not considered official benchmark districts, but we watch them. So they've got some really positive things going on, or they're local, like Rondout is not one of our official benchmark districts, but they are a district that we watch because they're close to us. Prior to all of the scores being released publicly, we privately had a data sharing agreement with those other districts. Many of our benchmark districts. So Jean and I contacted those districts individually, asked them to share their scores. In exchange for sharing the scores, we would share ours and some other of our communication pieces, which remarkably our communication piece ended up being like the thing that many other schools in the...
So Kevin, why don't you just say it? You put your letter out and all the other districts used
they copied
because
they stole it
that's
from
what
us.
happened.
Yeah, so it is really kind of a nice thing though. So just about the other districts, I highlighted Lake Bluff and Green up there. The other district with a similar level of low-income students would be Bannockburn, but they are smaller altogether. And then a district with similar number of English language learners, though they're a little bit higher, would be North Shore 112. Lincolnshire 103 has the exact similar percentage of English language learners. Their English language learners tend to be students who are coming from East Asian countries, where our students tend to come from Spanish-speaking countries. So, about those other districts. So some score comparisons for English language arts. Lake Bluff 65, we did comparatively very well to our other benchmark districts. We were talking about these at lunch today, about why other districts may have scored higher and what that really looks like. It is not our hypothesis that Wilmette 39, Lincolnshire 103, or Oak Grove 68 have remarkably better curricular programs in terms of English language arts. It is that they are doing some very specific things different. There were some different environmental factors on their assessment. We took ours on iPads. They, some of their grade levels took paper and pencil. And so, you know, there are a number of different factors there, but we still compare very well. Our district scores, when you look at districts across the state, for ELA, we were in the top 20 across the state. We were actually number 19, the number 19 district across the state, which is really something to be proud of. And then on math, we do even better. So score comparisons for math amongst our benchmark districts. The only district that is higher is Lincolnshire 103. And is Lincolnshire 103 and
Western Springs.
About 70% of our students at a level 4 or 5 on the math. If you look at districts and do their composite math scores, that places Lake Bluff in the top 10, number 9 actually, for districts across the state. So lots to be proud of. Lake Bluff Middle School specifically was number 50 of elementary schools in the state. So that was published in the Chicago Tribune, but we're not getting a lot of attention for all of the really great things that we're doing. And so I want you guys to hear what great things our students are doing, led by our teachers, and the amount of work. Our students took this assessment very seriously and came in very, very well prepared. Our teachers took it seriously. We had tested our systems, and our scores show it, and that's really exciting. So just a little bit about school report card data. You can view all of this online. Illinois Interactive Report Card publishes report card data for all Illinois schools. There's some comparison data about spending and student achievement, climate, other factors that impact students in schools. You guys are required to review and publish, and this year there's a new metric which looks at the number of students who have completed Algebra 1 by the time they leave us. Mark, did you have a question?
Yeah, there's lots of diverse opinions in the community and around the country about mandatory testing and all this sort of stuff and its value. Some parents keep their kids out and all that. But the upside is, you know, in our case, we tested very well. Are we planning on that success and doing something to help the community sell the town with those numbers? Are we preparing a press release for realtors or for the village? Because this is stuff that can help sell the community.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, those are things that we are going to be working on in the spring. Mandatory assessments are not going away. The rewrite of No Child Left Behind, the Every Student Succeeds Act, still requires testing every year for students in grades 3 through 8. So that is something obviously that we're going to talk about.
And we did do a press release. I think it made it to the Lake Forest patch.
Yeah.
That's
where it hit.
I even put it on my Facebook page.
Something for realtors every year. Maybe
we
that's
will
something to highlight.
definitely do that again. So, and again, the new metric this year is for the percentage of 8th grade students who have completed Algebra 1. Here's how we compare to our comparison districts. We are the highest. So we had 97.1% and a little bit of a secret, though the state was wrong in their data. It's actually 98.1 because there's one student included in there who actually left us prior to those numbers being published. So we're actually 98.1, which would certainly be among the highest in the state. So lots of stories published in the papers in recent weeks about the importance of Algebra 1 completion. None of them mention Lake Bluff. I need for you guys to hear that. And just some future plans, which is we have our subgroup data. We don't have the comparisons from the other districts, and so we need to dig deep to examine our data in terms of those subgroups. We plan to further educate all stakeholders on what's in the data. We have promised you and we'll hold true to our promise that we will look at any assessments that we can now eliminate now that we have these data, portions of the assessment where we excelled and other areas of the assessment where we fell short. And then prepare for the next administration of the assessment, which is in April. It'll be one testing window rather than two, and some shorter assessments. But you guys will be hearing a lot more about that come the spring. So I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
That's great.
You know, my first question whenever we talk about this is, when are we dropping some other assessment that...
And you saw right up there, absolutely. That is a part of our future plans.
Okay, we don't know yet.
So last week at our para joint committee, which is for teacher evaluation, we actually decided on the student growth measures that we are planning to use. That was one of the last pieces that needs to come into place in order for us to be able to eliminate something. The other, the real last piece that needs to come into place is for them to share information with us about our science assessment, which we still don't have because there's not a state appropriation for it yet. So, but I am making this personal promise to you that we will continue to look at any assessments that we can eliminate.
And I'm doing my part to eliminate the kindergarten assessment by talking with the state superintendent and writing lots of white papers. So.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
Appreciate it. We're going to switch things around just a little bit, go to item 8C, the 8th grade trip, so our principals can go home because it's
actually that's the next thing on the agenda.
Well, there's 8A, but
I don't have anything to report on
so
that.
worked out. Okay, that was easy. 8C, 8th grade trip. Do we turn this over to
So Nate, if you want to come up, I think you need to start with our recommendation and then backtrack as to why. Before you get started though, I would point everybody to the policy that I put in front of all of you on field trips and recreational class trips. It's very specific that it says on here, the superintendent or designee shall analyze the following factors to determine whether to approve a field trip: educational value, student safety, parent concerns, heightened security alerts, and liability concerns. So I want to remind all of you that you've already approved this trip, but because of heightened security concerns, we're bringing it back to you, and we have deadlines to meet, and that's why Nate's going to bring this to you again with our recommendation. There's no voting on this tonight, by the way. Okay.
Should I give some of the history in terms of the letter that went out last Friday?
Yes.
Okay. So last Friday I sent an email correspondence to all of the 8th grade parents who had signed up to send their kids on the trip to DC. We had 98 at that time. Sent that letter out letting parents know that we were nearing the 46-day threshold. After 46 days from departure, the trip becomes non-refundable for all parents unless they had purchased insurance. There were 49 families who had chosen to purchase the travel insurance, so roughly half of the students signed up to go. Obviously with that 46-day threshold occurring over winter break, we wanted to revisit and give them an opportunity, give parents an opportunity to let us know if they had a change of heart about sending their students on the trip. So far I've received a response from 2 parents indicating that they no longer intend to send their child on the trip. The deadline for notifying us was set as 12 o'clock noon tomorrow. So we might pick up some more, but right now it's just 2 of the 98 who are choosing not to go. There is a financial cost to that. Up through that 46-day threshold that I just mentioned, a parent prior to that could receive a 75% refund from Hemisphere. They would lose out on the remaining 25%, roughly $250. Again, unless they purchase the travel insurance. So at this point, given the relatively small number of folks that have canceled, I have had some additional parents who've also reached out to just sort of voice support for a decision one way or another about the trip, or ask questions about cell phone use on the trip. But Dr. Sophie and I have been talking and would recommend that we go ahead and continue plans to do the trip. There has not been a travel warning issued. Obviously, that would be the kind of thing that we would probably need to come back and revisit. The biggest sort of non-refundable component at this point is those airline tickets, which have been purchased and will be ticketing, which means assigning an actual student to an actual seat on an airplane. That's the next step.
Questions?
I had one parent express concern to me about the short time frame in which to make a decision. And I can't recall exactly now what that imminent deadline is, but can you speak to that?
Yeah, that's the issue of full refund versus not. We wanted to give parents an opportunity to let us know, at least so that they could recoup some money, 75%, after the return from winter break. They're out 100% unless they purchase the travel insurance. So
Those deadlines are from Hemisphere, though. Not
Okay.
from us.
Yes.
And they're not changeable. We can't negotiate with Hemisphere to buy a little more time.
Yeah, that's their policy.
If
And
they
it
had
really
insurance,
does.
if they had insurance, they could.
Right. Okay.
Nate, are you comfortable that the information actually got to the parents, that it didn't get lost in translation?
I've had a number of email responses from parents to the email that I sent, and some casual conversations with parents. Yeah, I'm confident that it was sent. It was sent with our school messenger system. I actually can go in and get a report, see how many people received it. They all did. I could even go back. I didn't look to see how many opened it, but that's even a stat that we can run as well.
I spoke to a number of parents over the weekend of middle school kids, and
There was some buzz.
there was, but a lot of people said the buzz was created by your email. They hadn't been thinking about it before, but other than the one parent that did express concern, everybody else said life's got to move on. Looking forward to the trip. We hope it goes forward. So I think it's the right.
Are there other
That's what I'm hearing
schools?
too. Yeah.
Are there other schools changing their Washington D.C. plans?
I asked Hemisphere, our representative Emily from Hemisphere, and she had not had any trips canceled through their company.
And there are no districts in Lake County so far that have canceled any trips yet.
Good.
I think fine, as long as, obviously,
If things change.
things change, then.
We have to do our due diligence in bringing this back to you, though, because we are under the heightened security according to board policy.
I'm glad that you sent the email giving people an opportunity to think about the issue, but I'm very glad to hear that we're going to move forward with it. I think that's the best thing for the kids, best thing for the community.
Yeah, the only feedback I had was the concern about not going. Most parents were fully behind, ones I spoke with, fully behind the trip moving ahead, and as Julie indicated earlier, live our lives that we were supposed to live our lives.
We did, I had shared with Mark that I was concerned that maybe teachers would be concerned about going, the chaperones, but the chaperones have said, well, why wouldn't we go? So
We're still turning away teachers who would like to be able to go on the trip and are not able to because, so that hasn't been.
Yes.
So
Application.
with all of your permission, we're just gonna keep moving forward on this?
Yes.
No. And Margaret and Nate, I've been told that it's time for you to go home and get your sleep.
Yes, thanks for staying so late. Sorry, so long.
Thank you very much.
All right, action items. We're going to start with 9A, independent contractor agreement for Lake Bluff Elementary School and Lake Bluff Middle School, Eklund Consulting. Jean, would you like to give us a brief overview of that?
Yes, as you remember, last month we approved Nate Eklund's contract to work with the administrative team. We've had our day administrative workshop already, so the coaching will be also beginning this month. We learned a lot about out of the 7 of us, which directions we all come from and how that influences our work. It was a very valuable day. Philip was nice enough to get us a great place on Lake Forest College's campus to kind of retreat away. It was wonderful.
Didn't charge you too much, did you?
We got a very good price. What I have in front of you today
I have nothing to do with that.
is our 2 other contracts. This really summarizes what he's been doing this year. The LBES contract, as I shared in the memo, is a matching. So you had a copy of his contract for LBES from Charmed. We matched that dollar amount this year. Next year we'll have to look into that because Charmed will only match it. This is the last year they're matching. At the middle school, his contract is in there. For the work, he's delivered some of that already. And once again, as we move forward and develop our systems, we can reevaluate all of this for next year.
Okay, so just to summarize, at the Charm Foundation portion of this, we are going to be paying $31.50.
Yes, and we're paying $31.50.
Right. Our responsibility is $3,150.
Right.
And at the middle school, there's an a la carte menu. Is that how it works?
Well, there's
6,000 fee inclusive fees.
Right, and then we have other things if we wanted to add to it.
Right. Okay, so 6,000 plus other stuff if we do that.
Right.
And are these are the same? We're approving both of these in one vote, correct?
Yes.
So for a total of at least $9,150.
Yes.
Any other questions? Okay, may I have a motion to approve the 2015-2016 independent contractor agreement for Lake Bluff Elementary School and Lake Bluff Middle School with Eklund Consulting, Mr. Nate Eklund, as recommended by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Hey.
Yes.
Hood.
Yes.
Rosen.
Yes.
Ryder.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Charlotte, yes.
Okay, motion approved. 9B, independent contractor agreement for Northwestern University Center for Talent Development. Jean, you want to give us a highlight there?
I think they really have been a valuable service to us. I think what I'm going to need from all of you is exactly what you're looking for. We have the information. I just need to figure out what you're looking for. It wasn't presented in a concise fashion, I think, as you well know, but they really have done a great job at guiding us to where we need to be going. I will also say, and Kelly's not here right now, but she has done a fantastic job of taking their feedback and running with it. I would also tell you, Kevin, with the assessment, has really worked with the teachers and staff. I'm going to applaud you again for hiring our FTE when we made Tom Brown our enrichment specialist for math. It's gone a long way, and Buffy Stauffer, they've done fantastic jobs with the elementary school. We really need to start focusing a little bit more on the middle school and what we're doing there for enrichment.
To your point of what I was looking for, I don't doubt that the administration, the staff's done a great job, and maybe that's in part why I'm questioning this contract.
I got that.
When I look at the services to be provided, and the presentation that I saw here tonight, again, it's a lot of data, and candidly, there wasn't much that I thought we learned. We knew that parents had the issues that they have now quantified that they had. We see a slight improvement. We probably knew that too. We know we have a lot of smart kids. No surprise there. And what I'm seeing in this Exhibit A is more of sort of the same data collection. Data collection, I think, is very valuable. It's good to capture them once in a while. Do we need to get the same sort of stuff every year? I can see us a year from now sitting and looking at a presentation that looks very much like the one we saw today.
No, because we'll do the presentation ourselves next year. But I will tell you, and I say this from a personal level because my brother is a high-level professor at a university.
Eric is very, very, he's a genius, and he is writing a lot of research in this area. And they really have provided us a lot of information and things to do. I would also share, especially in this area, we have to have an expert outside of the district advising us for a variety of reasons. Parents need to be reassured. Northwestern is one of the top in the country that does research in this. What we do with that research is kind of a compilation of what they advise us to do and what we feel we can do at this level. But they really have helped us put some major systems approach in the district. We still have a ways to go, but they have really helped us with a lot of this. So
it seems as though, as I heard, what people are wanting is, how did we take this research and translate it into practice in the classroom?
Right. That's what I got to.
And I think Kelly will do a better job of that the next time she gets the opportunity. I mean, and if you could advise her of anything, those are the points we need to hear.
I will advise her on that, and I think the one takeaway I would have you look at, which is the one takeaway that I really got from this, is that just in the year's worth of time, everything is starting to improve. Parents are starting to realize we are doing things. The test scores in here improve. We are seeing some benefits from it, and we will continue to do that. I do think also they will be able to better advise us, as Mark brought up the strategic plan. Even though, or Leanne brought up the strategic plan, we're going to need help kind of coming up with indicators for that. That's the one thing I think is very lacking in our plan because so much has changed.
What do you think you will receive after, let's say, next year this time, that will make a difference that you haven't already received?
I can't guess what will happen through next year because I have to assess. We've made so many changes between last year and this year. I really think that we have to have Kelly wrap up this year and we can answer a lot of your questions because the connection is really what is Northwestern advised and then how have you carried that forward and what differences that we've had.
It sounds like it's going to take 3 or 4 years to get it to a point where it starts being less hands-on from Northwestern and more we take.
You got to be careful. I mean, I've used consultants in the past. You just keeping, they tell you what time your wristwatch says. So I mean, you just got to be careful about how far it goes and what you intend to get out of it.
Exactly.
Do they take the data and then give you a set of written recommendations about what we should be doing next?
Yes.
Okay.
What was the population of parents involved?
Yeah, that's what I'd like to see.
I think I'd like to see that too.
What was the population? How many parents were responding?
All of the kids that have taken, I think he said 100?
About 100 kids.
About 100 kids, all of their parents were surveyed. Now, I can't tell you what the response rate was. I don't remember that.
It seemed like such a narrow, identical range that I just wondered.
But I would also tell you the majority of gifted parent concerns are relatively in the same area. And I think the biggest concern I had, which he brought out, I don't know if you caught it or not, but our biggest concern is those kids that are 2 or 3 grade levels ahead. And while we can really differentiate, and our teachers are becoming experts in that area, differentiation is not going to handle and cover that student that's 2 or 3 grade levels ahead. We have to do something extremely different.
Because they don't need enriching materials at that grade level. They just need to move ahead.
They need something very different.
Is there a reason not to share with the board what their written recommendations were?
Yeah, that's what I think. Oh, Kelly showed some of that in her presentation from last year.
Last year?
So, yeah.
Was that the May meeting? I think it was like my first or second meeting she did that.
So there's no recommendations since then.
So we have to.
They've been making a lot of verbal recommendations with her since then, but that was the recommendation from last year. Because we're kind of on yearly cycles with that.
Can I just suggest that we start by you just reminding us which meeting that was that Kelly presented, and we can just actually go back and look at her presentation ourselves, and if that's not sufficient, then we can ask more questions. Because I recall a very in-depth presentation by Kelly on this. Mm-hmm. It was like May or June.
Can I also add, because I've been a part of many of the meetings with Northwestern, and I was actually one of the people who actually asked you guys to engage in this contract initially.
The way that they work is that they work with us. So while they will make recommendations, those recommendations are based on their own understanding of best practices in gifted and talented instruction, combined with our expertise about what's going on in our district. So it's not a situation where we are carte blanche taking the recommendations from Northwestern and implementing them, and it's not that simple. It's a matter of taking the recommendations, combining them with our own understanding about where we're at as a district, and making them work in a variety of ways. So I think that it would not be a wise decision for us to not utilize such an outstanding program like Northwestern that is sitting in our backyard. That other districts across the area and across the country are begging to have them be a part of. That we have that benefit right here.
Because we do not have that expertise. And none of us have that expertise.
Which expertise exactly?
On gifted and enrichment and how to best service the kids. We don't have that on our team.
And there are many side benefits. So something that's not a part of this contract right now or our relationship is that they have brought their Saturday enrichment programs to us. That is not something that was occurring before. On Thursday afternoon, Kelly and I are being interviewed for their newsletter, which is going out across the country to their mailing list of gifted parents and families, talking about our story, Lake Bluff School District, and what's going on in gifted and enrichment programming here, and about the work that we've been doing over the last several years. So there are a number of sort of intangible things that come along with this contract that we wouldn't have without this relationship with Northwestern.
It seems to me like we need to rethink the way we present this to the board because it's getting very weedy, the conversation. We're going to kind of get down into the dance floor, and maybe there needs to be a more high-level approach to how this information is presented, so we don't feel like we're grasping at straws at what we're approving and why we're doing this.
I don't necessarily feel that it's getting weedy. Because I think that we looked at scores where we've got people saying that they mostly disagree that we're meeting their needs. I think it's worth us taking a look. What were the recommendations? Obviously, and of course, not sitting here to say that we would choose which parts of it you accept or don't.
Right.
You're the ones that are, but I would expect that you guys could let us know, administration could let us know what we're accepting, what we're not, how we're approaching it.
Wow.
That seems reasonable.
I think I'm going to go back to Philip's comment because I know Kelly went through that, and then when they first presented, and because he presented one other time here before, we were in the middle school gym. They had major recommendations in their presentation then.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been two, and we've only used them for 2 years. So there's 2 sets of recommendations that exist already. I need to get those to you, or at least tell you where they are in the board packets. And then we can go back and talk about this again. But I do agree, we're going to have to, this is Eric's work and Eric's research, and Eric presents on it. And I gave him a 10-minute time period. But like I said, that just may not be one of Eric's gifts.
I mean, so correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, our participation with Northwestern to me equates, at least in my world, to participating in almost like a benchmarking group where you've got a service that you're paying for that interacts with a lot of different school districts like ours. And they can take all those schools' data every year, and because they are interacting with all these different places, they can see differentiation in different school districts, and those that are outperforming us in a given year, they can go back to and say, what happened in your district? That way it gives you guys the ability, Kelly the ability, to then take that and implement that into the curriculum. So it's hard for me to see, based upon what I've heard, how you can untether yourself from that type of arrangement, because the benefits of that are every year. Does that make sense?
They are, but I think the bigger piece, which I really want everybody to know, is that this is the gifted and enrichment
expertise does not exist on our team. And I would tell you, with the group of parents that's concerned in that, we need experts to be able to come in and handle it and work with our teams.
That was probably the most highly attended board meeting we've ever had
Yes.
in the past several years.
But I do think we need to find a way of describing what it is that we're buying
Well,
from them
it's right
better.
there. It's in the contract, and that's part of the reason why I had some of the issues and questions that I've had. If you look at Exhibit A, services provided, it sounds like data collection to me. It doesn't. I don't see anything in here that talks about.
They actually, Randy attends all of our parents interested in enrichment meetings. They meet with the team how often, Kevin? Once every month?
Yeah, it has been every other week, pretty much. And they have answered our parent phone calls, taken many of our parent concerns, worked with us to develop common messages, and made sure that we are on the right track with where we're going.
They've been great in working with us. I don't think their contract necessarily reflects all the work that they do for us. Both of them have been great with our team. So.
Guys ready to go on? All right. We have a motion to approve the 2015-2016 independent contractor agreement with Northwestern University Center for Talent Development as recommended by the administration.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Peg.
Yes.
Hood.
Yes.
Rosen.
Yes.
Ryder.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Leanne Charlo, yes. Gatchell.
Get to go last. I'm going to say yes too, but I mean, I think you can see the
You want
challenge
it,
we
yeah.
have here. And particularly when it's, consulting contract after consulting contract in one night, I'm concerned about this being a slippery slope and over-reliance on outside support.
I get back, and I agree, I totally understand that, but we are a very small team and we are very limited as to our expertise areas and how much we can do. So that's all I would share with that. And I do think that we need to evaluate every year and kind of wean down, especially with like a Nate Eklund type person.
Right, and maybe next year, this guy needs a little more direction on how to make a presentation that addresses the issues that you think need to be addressed, instead of just piling out an hour's worth of data that really at the end was just gap. I mean,
Kelly did that to her.
yeah, give it to Kelly. Let Kelly do it.
Okay.
Our numbers are good, and this is what we did to get there.
Right. This is what we need to do.
This is what you're paying for.
Right.
9C. Approval of board meeting calendar. In this case, we're going to be talking about an addition of a special meeting on January 19th, March 1st, and April 5th of 2016 for bid approvals having to do with the Lakeville Middle School. Any questions or?
I have questions.
Okay.
There are 2 time periods. We have to add 3 special meetings, all based upon the bid schedule. These are dates that we have to have quorum at. So the question's going to be, let's take them one at a time. January 19th, I need to have quorum. And we can do it at 7 a.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m., whatever works. They will be the shortest meetings on records because all you're doing is approving bid packages.
6 p.m.
Could we have a show of hands, how many people would like the AM versus PM?
How many want AM?
Can you define AM?
7 a.m.
Not my preference.
Guess you want PM.
Doesn't matter. I can do either.
All right, how many people would prefer 6 rather than 7?
PM.
6
p.m.
6 p.m.
6 p.m.
Hold on.
Yeah, so 6:10. Right.
How about 6:30? How about if we did 6:30?
No.
6:15.
6:05 actually. I think you can do it by 6:05.
Talking about the 19th, right?
6:10?
6:10. Yeah, we're talking about all these dates.
Do you want to do 6:10?
Sure.
That would be immediately following.
6:10 would be great.
6:10 on January 19th.
You're going to send something out.
Yep. Well, Terry's going to resend the revised board calendar. All right, let's go March 1st, 6:10 p.m.
I won't be there.
Can I get 5 people or 4 people on that one?
Yeah.
Okay. April 5th, 6:10
Yeah.
p.m.
Yes.
Got it. So now you have to.
I won't be there either.
All right.
You won't be there, or you, okay, no fill on those two.
You still got 4 finals.
Okay,
Okay. Do I need to say the times?
no, you just say as amended.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the 2015-2016 board meeting calendar to reflect the addition of special meetings on January 19th, March 1st, and April 5th?
So moved.
2016 for bid approvals and consent for administration. Do we have a second?
Second.
You can do voice vote on that.
Roll call, voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved. Let's see. Approval of policy for the first read. Motion, in this case, we're talking about a motion to approve policy 7:10, equal education opportunities for first read as presented by the administration and perhaps by our policy committee.
Actually, Julie and I were on that phone call, and Terry Hodges recommended that we add immigration status because it's a new category.
Huge difference. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that.
And that, this could also be a voice vote.
Could you talk about it at length, whatever you're not comfortable
I'm just tired. Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments about that? Okay, we have a motion to approve policy 7:10, equal education opportunities for first read as presented by the administration.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved. Personnel report. In this case, we're talking about personnel issues having to do with number one, Brad DeJong, wellness teacher at the elementary school, effective January 11th, 2016 through January 22nd, wants to take an FMLA leave. And then we're also talking about Deb Kazmar, who's a special education assistant at the elementary school. And also about regarding the FMLA medical leave, December 15th, 2015 through January 8th of 2016. Questions or comments? Okay, may I have a motion to approve the personnel report for December 15th as presented by the administration?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Hood.
Yes.
Rosen.
Yes.
Ryder.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Charlo, yes. Gotchall.
Yes.
Peg.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 9F, consent agenda. This month we are talking about closed session meeting minutes for November 17th, 2015, regular Board of Ed meeting minutes for November 17th, 2015, truth and taxation hearing minutes for November 17th, 2015, our P card report, our bills payable, our impressed report, and our November treasurer's report. Would anybody like to have any of those removed from the consent agenda to discuss separately?
No.
May I have a motion to approve? Would anybody have any questions about anything up front, in general? Motion, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda for December 15th, 2015 as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Rosen.
Yes.
Ryder.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Charlo, yes. Gotchall.
Yes.
Peg.
Yes.
Hood.
Yes.
Motion is approved. That's the end of our action. And do we have any FOIA reports this month?
No, we do not have any
No.
FOIA requests.
Any public comments? No. May I have a motion? Anybody interested in adjourning?
I move we adjourn this meeting.
Yes.
Second. Motion to adjourn at 9:40. Okay, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Everyone, Merry Christmas.